The camera opens on a girl walking through fog. Her silhouette glows under cold runway lights. No dramatic poses, no smile. Just calm, like she knows something the rest of the world doesn't. In the 1990s, the fashion industry crowned her as the new Venus, the Scottish goddess with hair like sunlight and eyes that could silence an entire room. Kirsty Hume wasn't loud, she wasn't scandalous, yet every lens chased her. Then one day, she simply stopped. No headlines, no farewell, just gone. While others were fighting for more fame, Kirsty disappeared into the wind, leaving behind a question that still haunts fashion historians today. Why would someone at the peak of beauty, power, and success choose to walk away? Before the catwalks, before the camera flashes, there was the wind. It swept across the Scottish coast, through the small seaside town of Ayr, where a quiet girl named Kirsty Hume would grow up watching the sea change colors every day. She was tall even as a teenager, her hair pale gold, her voice soft like the weather there, gentle, unpredictable, and full of distance. She wasn't chasing fame. Modeling wasn't a dream. It was a coincidence. At 16, she was discovered by a local agency in Glasgow. Within a year, she was flying to London, and soon after, New York. To the industry, it felt as if she appeared out of thin air, a breath of cold northern light in an era obsessed with glitter and chaos. In a world where fashion screamed for attention, Kirsty whispered. Her look wasn't aggressive or overtly glamorous. It was ethereal. Editors called her a Botticelli painting come alive. Designers described her as too pure for the noise. She didn't fit into the mold of the 90s supermodel. She wasn't a party girl. She wasn't scandalous. She didn't chase the spotlight. Yet somehow, the spotlight followed her anyway. For photographers, she was a muse they could never quite define. Not commercial, not couture, something in between. And for the first time, the world began to see beauty not as perfection, but as serenity. By 1994, fashion had grown tired of noise. The world was shifting from the wild excess of the 80s into something stripped, quiet, almost spiritual. And Kirsty Hume arrived like a prophecy for that new era. On the runways of Chanel, Dior, Versace, and Gucci, she was impossible to miss. The tall, golden-haired girl who didn't need to perform to be seen. Karl Lagerfeld called her the embodiment of a calm revolution. To Tom Ford, she was the missing piece that gave Gucci's sleek minimalism its soul. While other models chased the spotlight, Kirsty became the light, moving through each show like a ghost of perfection. In the span of just 2 years, she went from a small-town unknown to one of the most booked faces in Europe and New York. Her image dominated Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, Elle, and the sleek black and white campaigns that defined the 1990s. There was something cinematic about her presence, as if every step down the runway was part of a dream sequence. She was serene, mysterious, and slightly detached, the antithesis of the loud, glamorous supermodel archetype. That was her power. In an industry obsessed with reinvention, she made stillness feel revolutionary. But behind that quiet composure, there was a restless artist beginning to wonder what existed beyond the camera lens. Fashion had given her everything: money, fame, beauty. Yet the more she gained, the more she felt the pull of something unseen. She once said in an interview, almost jokingly, "The best part about modeling was the money. The rest of it, I wasn't sure it was ever really me." And that was the first sign, the beginning of her slow retreat from the noise she had conquered. Fame had never been her fuel, and that was exactly why it couldn't hold her for long. By the late 1990s, the world that once adored her began to change. Fashion became louder again, more commercial, more digital, more demanding. But Kirsty was moving in the opposite direction. While others chased global campaigns and red carpets, she started saying no more often than yes. In interviews, she admitted she didn't plan to disappear. She simply followed her instincts. It wasn't a decision, she said years later. I just stopped feeling the pull. At 21, when most models were still desperate to rise higher, Kirsty stepped back. She married musician Donovan Leitch, son of the legendary Scottish singer Donovan, and retreated from the runways into a world of art, painting, and stillness. Soon she became a mother, giving birth to her daughter Violet in 2004. The spotlight that once defined her now belonged to another life: home, nature, and the freedom to be unseen. To the industry, her silence felt like a mystery. To her, it was peace. She traded the sound of cameras for the sound of wind through trees, trading couture gowns for paint-stained linen. In an old interview, she described that transformation not as a loss, but a return. She wanted to understand beauty beyond appearance, to feel it, not just show it. It was a sentence that defined her quiet rebellion, because in an age where visibility meant validation, Kirsty Hume had done the unthinkable. She vanished willingly. For most models, disappearing means the end of a career. For Kirsty Hume, it became a beginning. More than a decade after she left the runways, she quietly resurfaced, not with fanfare, but with an unmistakable calm. In 2014, Vogue UK called her return a ghost from a gentler time. And yet, when she appeared again on the Michael Kors runway in 2018, the crowd fell silent, not out of nostalgia, but out of awe. She hadn't aged out of fashion. She had simply evolved beyond it. Her face now carried the serenity of someone who had made peace with her past. The soft lines, the effortless grace, it was no longer the beauty of youth, but of understanding. In backstage interviews, she spoke about natural living, meditation, and the need to reconnect with something real. She had moved to California, embraced permaculture, painted, and raised her daughter in a home surrounded by trees rather than flashing lights. Kirsty had found redemption not in returning to fame, but in redefining what success even meant. She told Vogue, "I've learned to listen to nature. It teaches you how to be still, how to be patient. That's what I missed most when I was younger." Her return to the runway wasn't a comeback. It was a statement, a reminder that fashion doesn't have to worship youth or noise or perfection. Sometimes the most powerful thing a woman can do is to walk back into the light on her own terms. There are faces the world remembers because they burned bright. And then there are faces it remembers because they disappeared and left behind silence beautiful enough to echo forever. Kirsty Hume belongs to the latter. She was the calm in an era of chaos, the living proof that power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. In the 90s, she helped redefine beauty, from exaggerated glam to something more human, more honest. Designers like Lagerfeld and Ford saw in her not just a model, but a mirror, a reflection of everything fashion wanted to be and everything it feared to lose. But her true legacy wasn't written on magazine covers or couture gowns. It was written in the courage to walk away when the world demanded she stay, to choose solitude over spectacle, self-awareness over applause. In a culture that equates visibility with value, Kirsty reminded us that the act of retreat can be its own kind of rebellion. Today, as the industry embraces natural beauty, mindful living, and sustainability, you can trace a quiet line back to her, the woman who left before it was fashionable to do so. She didn't fade because she failed. She faded because she evolved. So when you see that one photo of her, tall, ethereal, eyes half closed as if lost in thought, remember this: Kirsty Hume didn't just model clothes. She modeled peace. And in an industry that runs on chaos, that might just be the rarest beauty of all.